The one thing that seems to constantly change is the industry itself and the types of things that we're working on. And that's why if you decide to go into the high-tech industry, you're going to find things constantly changing. The 1970s, when I was here at Stanford, that was probably the era of what people call some of the bricks and mortar of the technology industry. That was a time when semiconductors, some of these great semiconductor companies started to be formed. Companies like Intel, who we did not represent, but LSI Logic, Monolithic Memories, Cypress Semiconductor, some of the great semiconductor companies of the 1970s. And everyone thought when that boom happened and everything, well, what was next for the Valley? And then I came in the 1980s. And what happened in the 1980s was the era of computers. Now, I came in right before the huge boom of the late 80s. But I will tell you that with respect to what happened there in the 80s was you had the Apple computers. You have many companies like that, the Sun Microsystems with Scott McNealy coming out of Stanford and starting it. I remember right after the boom, I picked up Time magazine, and this was shortly after I'd come up here. And the cover of Time magazine said, has the Silicon Valley gone bust? And I remember calling my friend and going, oh, God, here I thought I made this brilliant move and come into the Silicon Valley. It looked like it was going to be interesting, and now we've seen the best days behind us because the best computing days were those public offerings had taken place and everything. But then, of course, came the 1990s, and the 1990s were the era of information technology and the internet. And I can't even begin to describe to you what went on in the 1990s. It was the most unbelievable boom. I will tell you some of the lessons learned from that boom. When I was in the middle of it, I thought, and I was, in the middle of the most amazing change in world history. And that was the way we felt around here. We talked about, the Industrial Revolution, and we were in the middle of the information revolution. And these companies were coming up with phenomenal ideas and were changing the world and everything. But we also learned a lot of lessons during that time. People were throwing plans together, getting funded. No one was worried about future revenues. The building blocks of management, putting in place, a firm management structure, all of that was out the window in the 90s. And we all did very well and then got very burnt. But we did learn a lot of lessons. But the one thing we also learned was that was just a cycle and things would once again change. And so here we are in the 2000 era. And I'm not sure in the end what this era will be called. I will tell you that Carly Fiorina, who was a former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, and Hewlett-Packard's a client of our firm, described this era as a digital, mobile, personal, and virtual era. And I think she's probably right with respect to that description. Digital to the extent that everything is compact in this stage of the game. All the data is compressed. Mobile, probably I'm impressed that none of you are checking your email as we speak. Maybe plenty of people online are, but mobile because the minute I walk outside this room, I will pick up my BlackBerry and see what's been going on in the office. Personal, because we all have come up with our own personal plans. And it's just everything is more personal out there in this day and age. And virtual to the extent that infrastructure doesn't matter, geography doesn't matter, everything's all over the world.